How are you guys doing? Good? Really? I'm not sure about, how you guys doing? Let's try it one more time. How you guys doing? Awesome. Welcome to the Computer History Museum. Thanks for having me here today. I'm so excited to talk to you guys. I've been talking with Kate for weeks and preparing for this, and I really, hopefully, the stuff I have to share with you will be really interesting. Now, I have one very, very, very important request that I have to ask of you. I need you guys to be interactive. Do you know what that means? Throw it out there. What does interactive mean? Raise your hand and speak up loud. Speak up loud. Participate, and if you have ideas, share them. Let's say it. If you have ideas, share them. If you have ideas, if you have ideas, that's what interactivity means. Thank you. So my name is Ayori Selassie. I came up here from Oakland, California. That's where I'm born and raised. I'm an engineer. Do I look like an engineer? Yes. Absolutely. Do you all look like engineers? Yes. Absolutely. Say, I look like an engineer. Say, I look like an engineer. Yep, you sure do. Engineers look nice. All right, so I'm going to talk to you guys about something that's really important and close to my heart. I'm an engineer, but I'm also a designer. I'm also an artist. I also love playing games. I love reading. I love writing. I love sharing stories. And I'm sure those things are interesting to you all too, right? Yes. Right? Yes. All right, remember that. OK, so I'm going to talk about something called design thinking. Has anyone heard of design thinking before? Design thinking. Design thinking is when you pay attention to the things in your life and the things that you value, and you act out your values in the world, whether it's at work, or whether it's at home, or whether it's with your family. Whatever is most important to you, you make ways for that to happen in the real world. And that's what I do for a living, but that's also how I live my life. This is a picture of a lady who I met when I was in Ethiopia, all the way far across the other side of the world in Africa. And she was carrying this huge bundle of sticks up this hill. I was actually driving up this hill in a big car in a low gear. And I was thinking, wow, how is she carrying these sticks up there? I wonder why she's doing it. And then I realized something. That's what she does. That's how she lives her life. That's how she makes a living. That's how she feeds her family. That's how she does everything that's important to her. So for her, her values are to make sure that she is able to live a good life, provide for her family, and so she works really hard to make sure that happens. And she's helping lots of other people as she does it. Even though it's difficult, she does it. And I think our life is probably a whole lot easier than that, right? Especially with all this technology we have in this room, right? Yeah, so what are we going to do with all of the privilege and all of the opportunities and resources that we have? We're going to start using our minds and start designing and thinking about ways that we can use our values to help other people, to help those we love, and to help other people. And that's what I do. So this is where I grew up. I grew up in West Oakland, California, all the way down in the East Bay. It was a very dangerous neighborhood. It was a lot of poverty. I was very poor when I grew up, but I'm doing quite well now, mostly because I learned about technology. And the reason why I learned about technology is because my mom was incredibly, incredibly brilliant. And she told me and all my siblings, she said, you guys need to learn about technology because technology is the future. And that's what's going to help you live a better life. And it's going to allow you to solve problems in society. Before, when I thought about technology, I didn't really think about solving problems for people. I just sort of thought like, oh, it's the television, oh, it's the radio. But when you really get into it, you can use technology to do all sorts of things. You can help people overcome diseases. You can build better housing for people. You can provide food for the entire world. And you could even do something crazy like eliminating poverty or creating world peace. That sounds kind of awesome, right? So I put all my energy into learning about technology. You'll actually see one of these computers here today. But back when I was using computers, they looked really, really old. So some of the stuff that you'll see as you're going about the Computer History Museum doesn't look like the things that you use today. Like, they don't look like tablets or phones. They look like these big, hulky machines. And a lot of the screens look kind of like this. That's exactly what I was using when I was your age. And I learned how to program in a language called BASIC. Has anyone heard of BASIC? Has anyone heard of C++? Has anyone heard of Java? JavaScript? What about HTML? CSS? Wow, you guys have been doing some interesting stuff. I think you guys have to come and teach me some lessons. So when I was 11 years old, that's when I started coding. And when I was 14 years old, my brother came and he told me about HTML. And he showed me how to code HTML on my computer. And I was like, wow, I didn't know I could make web pages. I didn't know I could make websites. So you know what the first thing I started to do? I tried to figure out how I could use HTML to share with other people the things that I thought were awesome. So one of the things I love is cartoons. You guys like cartoons? Yeah. What kind of cartoons do you like? Yell them out. Adventure Time. What else? Speak up louder. Spider-Man. Spider-Man is one of my favorites. I love Sailor Moon. The first website I made. Who knows about Sailor Moon? Some people. The first website I made was actually about Sailor Moon. And I put it online, and I started getting lots of visitors because people were looking for Sailor Moon, and they were able to find it through my webpage. But then later on, I realized that there were businesses and people who wanted to create websites so that they could make their businesses more successful. And eventually, they started working with me, and I started making websites for them, and they started paying me for it. Hello? That was pretty cool. So I kept doing it. And now I work in one of the fastest growing technology companies in the world, one of the most innovative companies, and I get to work with some really, really cool companies like Facebook, like Twitter, like Instagram and Pinterest. And they all come to me when they're like, hey, I've got a problem. Can you help me solve it? What do you think I'd say to them? Yeah. Absolutely. So engineering has taken me all over the world. Ever since I started as a young child, just like you all, and then I ended up going all over the world. And even was fortunate enough to take my daughter to some really awesome places, and she's going to keep going to awesome places with me too. Who here wants to travel all over the world? Everybody. Everybody. It's a great thing to do, and if you haven't thought of it, you should think about it and give it a try. So one of the things that I do is I use my wisdom and my knowledge and the things that I've learned to inform and influence how things can be in the world, in technology, in business, and in life. And when I say what I mean inform and influence, inform is when you can discover how things work. How does technology work? What do people want? I do research. I ask people questions. I ask a lot of questions, sometimes silly questions, but with that, I'm able to learn lots of information. I'm able to inform people, give people information that they need, so that when they come ask me questions, I have great answers for them. The second thing I do is influence. Who knows what influence means? Do you have friends? Do you have friends? Do your friends have influence over you? Yeah, a little bit? Like, what if your friend comes up to you and she says, hey, I heard about this really awesome new app. You should try it. What would you say? You say, okay. That means they have influence over you. So you all also have influence. And when you have influence and you can leverage your influence, you can help people make better decisions, and you can help people do really good things in the world. And so that's how I make my living. I also use something called design thinking. And that's when I consider 3 really important aspects. I consider the people, what they want, what their needs are, what problems they might have. And then I think about the technology. Is it possible to solve this problem with technology? And with that, I'm able to provide the right information and think of some really cool ideas. And then the other thing I have to do is I also have to think about the business side of things, because business is where all the money comes from. And with that, I have to ask questions like, will it last? Is it sustainable? Do you guys know what sustainable means? Who here recycles? Everybody recycles. Good, good. If you recycle, that means that you're taking something that you've used in the past and you're able to reuse it so that you don't waste anything. And one of the most important things about creating good businesses that help society is that they don't waste and that they can last and they can continue to create more value for everyone. That way, when you guys want to go and buy a cool pair of shoes, it means that somebody else in another country who maybe can't afford that pair of shoes, they can get that pair of shoes as well because the business is scaling and it's viable and it's sustainable. So these are some of the practices that I use to solve problems. And when I've got a problem, someone brings me a problem, I have to ask myself a couple of questions, and I ask them other questions. The first thing I ask is, what's that first question there? Why? Why do I ask that question? Why ask why? Because you want to understand what's going on. You want to understand why it's important. And then the next thing you want to find out is what is actually happening. What's being done about this? What are they doing today? How does it happen? What kind of technologies are they using? How are they using those technologies? And then once you ask all those different questions, you can ask yourself the final most important question. Is it done? Or can it be improved? Can it be done better? What's something that you would like to do? What's something that you would like to improve in the world? Shout it out.
Better ice cream flavors.
Better ice cream flavors. That's a great idea. Give me another one. World peace, I heard. I heard a couple other ones. Shout them out. End world hunger. Yeah. These are great ideas. You guys should be yelling that stuff out even louder than that. So once you guys figure out something, a good problem that you want to figure out how to solve, you can figure out some ways to improve it by asking yourself these questions, and that's what design thinking means. There's another thing I want to talk to you guys about called moonshot thinking. Who here has heard of moonshot thinking? Nobody's heard of moonshot thinking? When you go through the Computer History Museum, there's a picture of a guy on the moon. Who remembers that person's name? Neil Armstrong. Neil Armstrong was the first American to go to the moon. And that was an amazing thing when he did it. And a lot of people thought that it wasn't possible. Moonshot thinking is when you imagine things that other people say, that's not possible. And you say, I'm going to imagine it anyway. And I'm going to figure out a way to do it. That's a really, really important skill to develop because if you can think about impossible things, guess what? You can do impossible things. Who here is ready to do the impossible? What am I expecting? Who here is ready to do the impossible? You guys aren't ready to do the impossible? Who here is ready to do the impossible? Yes, let's do it. So when you imagine what you would do if nothing were impossible, that's moonshot thinking. Now we have a whole room full of moonshot thinkers. So here we go. I have Neil Armstrong, and I have one question. One question I want you guys to think about all today. And when you go to sleep, I want you to have a really cool answer, and I want you to write it down. What is your moonshot? What's one thing that you would do if nothing were impossible? And when we have the break, I want you guys, if you guys have some ideas, I want you to share them with me when I come down and meet with you all. One thing that can help you come up with some ideas, your moonshot, come up with some ideas, is to know where things have been in the past. So we all have cell phones, we all have food that we eat every day, we have roofs over our heads, but what did houses look like before today? What did your grandparents' house look like when they were your age? What about your great-great-grandparents? What about if you go further than that? What about your phone? What about your food? How did those things look way back in the day? If you can find out what they looked like back then, and you can compare it to what it looks like today, you can see the difference. You can see how far we've gone as a society. That can help you realize how much further you can take your ideas when you do moonshot thinking. So I'm going to share some of my favorite things and how they've progressed over time. You guys excited about that? All right, let's start with this. What's that? Games. Yes, games. Who likes games? I love games. So way back in the day, this is what games looked like. What's that up there? Tug of war. Tug of war. You notice something funny about that picture? They don't even have a rope. That's crazy, right? People had to come up with really interesting and innovative ways to play games when they didn't have things. What about this picture up here? What's that? Marbles. They're playing marbles. Hopscotch. These are all games that people were able to play without having a lot of things. So they were being innovative. They were having ingenuity to come up with great ways to have fun with very little. Now, this is what we did when I was your age. This is a game called Chips Challenge. It was on Windows 3.1. And who knows this game here? Who's played that? Does it look like this when you play it? No, right? That's how it looked when I played Mario. So Mario's come a long way. Another thing, when I look at this picture, it kind of reminds me of something you guys play today. Say it again. A maze. It's kind of like a maze. Is there anything else that it looks like? Minecraft? Totally looks like Minecraft. Nowadays, when you play Minecraft, you can create your entire world. When I was younger, I had to just kind of play with sort of the set worlds, set levels that they gave us. But you guys have a whole different way of playing. In Minecraft, you can even customize your character and make it look however you want it to look. And now technology is moving even further along. Who knows what this is? Virtual reality. Virtual reality is when you're having an immersive experience in the game, and everything that you see is inside of the virtual world. So even when you interact, you're interacting in this virtual world. So can you imagine if gaming has gone this far since I was your age, how far you're going to take it? It's interesting, right? What's this? Symbols. So symbols, way back in the day throughout history, there are all sorts of symbols from all sorts of different cultures. And I see lots of different cultures in here today. This is from my culture here, my ancestral land in Ethiopia. These are some religious symbols that people would wear across their neck and on their body and in their clothing. And then these are also some symbols from the Mayan civilization, wherein they carved different symbols, and you could find them when you go down in Latin America. You can find them in different places. Now, when I was young, symbols kind of looked a little bit like this. Who knows what these are? What do you call these? Emoticons. So it's kind of plain, right? Are these the kind of emoticons you use? Some of you. But some of you use different kind of emoticons, right? Some of you might use emoticons that look more like this, right? They're animated and they're fun. Who's this? Pusheen. Yes, very cool cat. What about art and design? So I love art. I love art so much, and I love design. This is some of the oldest art and design that you can find. Who knows what that is? Hieroglyphics from what country? Egypt. What continent is that on? Africa. You guys are super smart. Wow. This is what art design looked like when I was your age. Who knows what application this is? Microsoft Paint. So most people, when they use Microsoft Paint, it was really difficult for them to make anything really fun and exciting. Everything everybody made kind of looked like that. It's not that impressive, right? But if you work really, really hard, you can make some really cool stuff in Microsoft Paint, even when I was young. Now, this is the kind of stuff you guys are doing nowadays. Who knows what this is? Some people, Paper 53. This is an application you can get on your iPad app. And you can draw in it, and you can actually remix other people's art, and you can collaborate with other people. It's really cool. A lot of people are using technology like this now because they can draw with their pencil on the tablet. They can use their fingers and blur. And it's almost like using It's almost like using paint and stuff in real life. It's really amazing. So what about this? What's that? Have you guys seen this before? This is some of the oldest technology for photography. Back then, they had to have the cameras set up, stuck in one place, and in order to take the picture, they had to go underneath a curtain, and they had to take the picture. And a lot of times, the picture wouldn't come out so well, and they couldn't really tell if it was nice or not because they had to do something with the film. Do you guys remember what that is? They had to develop it. Nowadays, when we use the word develop, we're usually talking about code, right? Back then, they were talking about developing the film for photography. My, have things changed. So when I was your age, I had a camera kind of like this. It's called a Canon AE1, and it also used film, but it was a more modern type of film. And in order to develop that film, you had to go into a room that was dark. You know what this is called? It's called a dark room. It's kind of weird, right? That's how we had to do it. So, so when you would take your pictures, you'd have to wait days, weeks, sometimes even months before you could see what the picture would look like. Is that how you guys do things nowadays? No? Nowadays it looks kind of like this, right? Who's that guy? What's he holding? A selfie stick. Who takes selfies? I take selfies. And you can put, okay, so how many people here actually have pictures, photos on paper? Very few people nowadays have photos on paper because most of your pictures are where? Inside your phone. They're still digital on platforms like Instagram. So things, again, change very, very much. Somebody was doing some moonshot thinking when they came up with this stuff. I guarantee you. So what about this? Who knows what that is? Telephone operators. Telephone operators. Back in the day, if you wanted to call your grandma, do you know who you really had to call first? A person called the operator. Most of these people were women all over the world, and you call the operator, you dial 0, you tell the operator who you wanted to call, and then they would call that person for you, and they would patch them through. In order to patch them through, they actually had to take those little plugs there, like that, and they actually had to move them through these different circuits in order to connect your phone line. Isn't that strange? And so you know what would happen if a lot of people were making phone calls? You couldn't get through to the operator. Is that crazy? Yeah, it's like really slow internet, right? Buffering. So when I was your age, it was kind of like this, where we had these telephone cords, and if you were expecting a call from someone, you know, they had to tell you, hey, I'm going to call you at 3 o'clock on Saturday. Make sure you're there. And then you had to make sure that you were home, and if you missed the call, let's say you stepped outside for a moment, you wouldn't know that they called you because sometimes a lot of people didn't have answering phones or answering machines. So that's how technology was back then. But now it's kind of like this. Who knows this song? Hotline Bling. So nowadays you guys have cell phones. That means that you can receive a call anywhere. You can be at the park, you can be at school, you can make phone calls all over the world. So again, this is a great example of moonshot thinking. So what about chat? What do you think chat looked like a long time ago? Who thinks I'm going to show them? This is what chat looked like a long time ago. You know what this is? The Pony Express. They would take the letters, they would write them, they'd give them to a man, the man would hop on a pony, and he would ride all the way to the next place and deliver the letter. And then we got a little bit more advanced, and we started using, what's this? Carrier pigeon. Can you imagine using a pigeon to deliver a text message to your friend? Is that kind of crazy? That's what they did back then. When I was your age, chat looked like this. This is something called IRC. And this is actually the first place where people started doing file sharing and started sharing files like MP3s and movies. You had to be on the computer, you had to have a client, it was difficult, a lot of people didn't know how to do it, and if you weren't really, really smart, if you weren't like a good hacker, then they'd kick you out of the channels and then you get upset. I didn't get kicked out though, I knew what I was doing. Nowadays, chat's like this. So you send your messages, a lot of people are using these things. What are these? Shorthand, what do you guys call that? Yeah, so nowadays chat is very easy, very fast, real time, you can do it from anywhere. And there are lots of other applications that help you do this as well. So I showed you all that so that you can think about where things have been, because I want you to do two things. What do I want you to do? It's right up here, I gave you a hint. What do I want you to do? Stay inspired and yes, I want you to stay inspired and stay determined, because moonshots are hard, but you just saw a whole bunch of examples of people just like you who followed their ideas, they used design thinking, and they stayed inspired and they stayed determined, and now they've given you all the technology that you have today. Can you imagine what kind of technology you'll be giving to generations in the future? Yeah? Yeah? You guys are working on it, huh? Good. So these are some of the things that keep me inspired. So this is like sort of some really old paintings that were on papyrus, and I've copied them. They inspired me, so I copied some of that style. I also love drawing, so these are drawings on paper. These are drawings in paper. This is on real paper. This is in the app called Paper. There's a big difference. So I still love drawing. This is my daughter's artwork. My daughter right there, she made this. She also made this. When she first started drawing, her art looked a little bit more like that, but she's been learning a lot from a lot of people in this community, and now her stuff looks like that. So she's gotten so much better, huh? Yeah, very cool. Also, some of the other things that inspire me, this is actually a natural place. This is a pier, a marina. And so I like to go to different places. I like to go to the ocean. I like to go to parks. I like to go hiking. I like to sit in the grass. I like to sit on the beach, watch sunsets. I like to do all sorts of things out in nature because they inspire me. It inspires me to do different things in technology. I start to see patterns in nature, amazing patterns in nature, and I start to think about what I can do with those patterns with technology. And it gives me lots of really cool ideas, and I'm able to do really fun stuff. So I want you guys to try it out. I'm going to give you a tip that'll help make it just a little bit easier. So I already gave you the idea of moonshot thinking. So I want you to think about what you would do if nothing were impossible, right? What you would do if nothing were impossible. And I'm going to give you a framework to follow that. Once you have an idea, I'm going to give you a couple of tips you can follow. Here we go. So this is my process that I use. First, I think about whatever it is that I want to do. I write it out. I write it out even in just a few words and connected words, or I might draw a picture. And that's what I call the draft. I draft it out, get my ideas out. That makes it really easy for me to share it, communicate it to other people. And then I start to do something called discovery. I start to discover what my ideas look like in the real world. I go back out into the real world. I go to the marinas. I go to the parks. I go talk to different people. And I find out if my idea looks like other things in the world. And that way, I'm starting to discover, and I'm starting to come up with even more ideas. I'm starting to think, this thing that I thought was impossible might really be possible. Oops, gotta go back. And then I start to make some decisions. Because usually after I've spent this time discovering and thinking about these things, I have lots and lots of ideas, and I might have too many. So I have to narrow them down. So I prioritize them and pick out my favorite ones, and then I decide I'm going to work on those, and then I actually start to develop it. So I'll try and find out a simple way to test it in the real world. So if I have an idea of like a hardware device to make, maybe I'll go out and get a Raspberry Pi and try and come up with a way to prototype it using my Raspberry Pi. And then I'll go out and test it in the real world. And sometimes I might try it, prototype it, and test it out, and it works great. And I'm like, fantastic, and I feel so excited and proud, and I want to show it off. But then sometimes I go out and try it out, and it doesn't work out so well, and it fails, or it's broken. How do you think I feel when that happens? I feel super excited. You know why? Because I've learned something new. Every time you try something and you fail, it's a great opportunity to learn something new. So I always note down what I learned, and then I do this other process. It's really important. I start all over again, and I repeat it. And so that way, I'm inspired by what I learned, and I'm determined to figure it out, and I keep doing it over and over again, and that's how you do impossible things. And this is some of the people that I work with, and I help them do impossible things in their life using these ideas, and they're all amazing. And this is my website, so if you guys want to try out some of the other ideas I have, you can go check it out. Thank you guys so much. You guys have been a fantastic audience. Give yourselves a round of applause. Awesome. I think we have some time for questions. Are there any questions in the room?
What is your favorite moonshot, or what is your moonshot?
My moonshot is I want to live in every continent on this earth, and hopefully eventually I'll even live on a planet that's not the earth. That's my moonshot. I got some phases to go. Any other questions?
Are there any questions on the other side over there?
I have some questions for you all. Oh, you have a question?
What's your favorite thing to do?
My favorite thing to do is hanging out with my daughter and doing art. I love doing art. It's so fun. I have some questions for you guys, too, if there are no questions for me. Oh, cool.
What inspired you to be an engineer?
My mom was a big inspiration to me in being an engineer. My whole dream was that I wanted to be able to take care of my mom and give her a wonderful life, because she spent her whole life giving her children a wonderful life, so I wanted to be able to do that for her. And being an engineer is a great way to make a living. It's a great way to solve problems for society and humanity, and all those things keep me inspired. Great questions.
What are you most proud of?
What am I most proud of? I'm actually most proud of my daughter. She is kind of like a mini-me, and she's always doing really cool stuff. And not many. She's kind of my size. And she's always doing really cool stuff, and I'm really proud of her.
I have a question over. Oh, you got questions there.
What is the favorite place you've been?
Ooh, my favorite place. That's hard. That's a hard question. I really loved visiting my ancestral homeland, Ethiopia. That was amazing. But I also went to Israel and Jerusalem and Palestine and Jordan and Costa Rica and all sorts of other places, and they were amazing as well. And I also really love visiting my family in the Midwest here in the US. But I would say Ethiopia was my favorite trip.
What inspired you to do art?
Art, I think it was just in my blood. When when I was little, when I was like 3, 4 years old, I would just grab the crayons and a piece of paper, and I would just sit and draw and come up with different things. And it just helps me to get the ideas that I have in my mind out. And I always feel good whenever I draw. So that's why I keep doing it. Oh, there's one over here too.
Can you give us an example of the kinds of problems you solve in your job and how you go about solving them?
Yeah, one of the problems that we solved recently, this was like last year, is there were a lot of young kids who weren't getting exposure to technology. I know you guys have a lot of exposure to technology because of where you live, but there were lots of kids in like the Midwest, in the middle of the country, in like St. Louis and like New Orleans, and they didn't have access to the same kind of technology. So I got together with a bunch of friends of mine. We all work here at different tech companies, and we decided to go out there and do a hackathon. And so we got everybody together, and we said we're going to mentor these young kids, and we're going to show them how to code, and we're going to show them how to use design thinking. And we spent an entire weekend in New Orleans and teaching kids how to solve problems and helping them execute on their ideas. And we had a lot of amazing ideas that came from different kids. One girl was in a foster home. She was in foster care, and a lot of the clothing that she would get was like secondhand clothes. So a lot of times it didn't match, and she didn't like the way it looked. So she came up with an idea that when people had clothes, they could take a picture of it and put it on an app, and then you could go in and pick out the things that you want that match, and then you can get it that way, so that it would help kids who are in foster homes who don't have parents that can buy them really nice new clothes. They would still be able to have really nice clothes. And that was her idea, and I thought it was brilliant. And we were so excited to help her prototype that out and prove it.
1 second.
What's your favorite project you've worked on?
My favorite project that I've worked on. There's so many. My favorite project right now is the Life Model Canvas, actually. It's a framework, sort of. I kind of showed you guys a little bit of that framework, but it basically helps you to figure out what your values are, figure out what's most important to you in your life, figure out what goals you want to achieve, what you want to do in the world, and also figure out your moonshot. And then you can sort of connect all the different ideas. You can see how they relate to each other. And then you can organize, like, here are the different kinds of habits I need to develop in order to be successful in these things. Here are the kinds of support systems I need to find, the different kinds of mentors, or the different schools I need to go to, or the different skills I need to develop. And, what are the challenges you might have, what might be getting in the way, and also what inspires you to keep going forward. And so we go out and we do this project with all sorts of people. We do it with really successful people, really wealthy people, but we also do it with people who don't have a lot of money and who don't have a lot of resources. And it's very empowering to them. And so I love doing this project. Every time I do it, I feel like it's the best thing in the world.
How long are you planning to become an engineer?
I'm an engineer for life. Just like I do design thinking in the beginning of my presentation, it's called Design Thinking for Life. I'm an engineer for life. And really, if you think about it, we're all designers and we're all engineers. We just sometimes don't call ourselves that. But I am forever going to spend my whole life trying to figure out how to solve problems and help people. I would love for us to be able to make sure we have clean water for people all over the world. I would love for everyone in the world to have enough food to eat, and for everyone to have a safe home and a place to live. and for everyone to have security and to know that, you know, they don't have to worry about violence or bad things like that happening to them. And so I want to use my design and engineering capabilities and all my friends and all of you guys to solve those kinds of problems.
I'm wondering, do you ever encounter people who, sorry, here. I'm wondering if you ever encounter people who don't believe in you or underestimate you, and if so, how do you deal with that?
That's a good question. Actually, it happens all the time. Most of the time when I walk into a room, people think I'm like the sandwich person or something. I don't know why. I think I dress snazzy enough, right? You think so? Yeah, so sometimes people prejudge me, and they don't know about my capabilities because they haven't spent the time to ask me. And so oftentimes you'll run into people who will make assumptions about you with no good reason. And you have to really know who you are. You have to really know what you value and what inspires you. How are you going to stay inspired? How are you going to stay determined? Because whatever it is that you want to do, that you're made to do, you can do it. And you just need to know how to stand up to those people. And sometimes you have to ignore them. Sometimes you have to talk to them so that they can understand that they're wrong, so that they can be corrected and learn new things, because we can all teach each other new things. And sometimes you just have to go right out there and just prove them wrong. So I have to do that all the time, and it never gets old.
All right, I think we have time for just one or two last questions.
When did you realize you wanted to be an engineer?
I think I realized I wanted to be an engineer when I was 6 years old, and I was reading a Spider-Man comic, actually. I really liked Spider-Man, and I was looking at the pictures. And before, I didn't really like to read so much, but since I was reading the comics, I was like, oh, this is really cool. Reading is so fun. And I realized that that was innovation. That was like people using the same ideas that have existed all the way from way back in the hieroglyphics, but presenting it to us in a new way with new stories. And I decided I wanted to do that. So I decided I was going to write and I was going to draw. But nobody told me that that was engineering. It took me a long time to figure out that that's actually what that is. So all these things that you do whenever you are developing ideas, whenever you're telling stories, whenever you're writing or reading or creating anything, any kind of creation of sort, is always engineering.
All right. So those were a lot of great questions. And I guess I have one last question, because you've shared a lot of great information and your story and your passion with us. So as you look out at this room of incredible young women today, what would be your advice to them as you kind of see them work forward as engineers themselves and move into their own futures?
What advice would I give to you? I would give you the advice that I would have wanted somebody to give to me, and that's find out what's important to you. Always find out what's important to you. Ask why, and never give up. And believe that whatever you want to do is possible, even if other people believe that it's impossible. And also, find people that can help you.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for sharing all your amazing stories and passion with us. Great. Big round of applause, everybody. Thank you, Ayori.